Join me for Reflections in Time. Hello and welcome to Reflections in Time. I'm your host for this series, Paul Borgie. On each of our programs in this series, we've visited with individuals who've had a major impact at the University of Nebraska at Omaha, and the University of Omaha too, I might add. On this program, we have as our guest this time, Dr. Kirk E. Naylor, a man who's had a tremendous impact on our campus, its students, its faculty, and its staff, and our Omaha community. Dr. Naylor is a native of McPherson, Kansas. He graduated from Covert Rural High School in 1936. He received his A.B. degree from McPherson College, his master's and doctor's degree in education from the University of Kansas. He came to our University of Omaha in the year 1960 and served as Dean of Administration and Professor of Education until 1967, when he became acting president. That same year, he was appointed the 9th president of our university. He stepped down from the president's position in 1971, and until 1981, he taught full-time in our College of Education here at UNO. Today, we're out on our UNO beautiful campus with Dr. Naylor, and we're going to be visiting with him about his years here at the university. And there have been many now, and we're so glad you could come by and chat with me today.
Paul, I'm delighted to be here, and I'm delighted to visit with you about this university.
You and I have worked together, and I've worked for you for so long. What I wanted to ask you, and I don't know if I've ever asked it in quite this way, what caused you and your good wife, Margaret, to come to Omaha and to this university? What was the seed that was sown that brought you up here?
We came to the university, Paul, because the offer made to us by Dr. Bale, who was then president of the Municipal University of Omaha, was so intriguing and so interesting and so challenging that we just decided that we would like to give it a whirl. Now, I need to couch that a little bit in terms of where we were.
Yes.
We were at Southwestern State College in Oklahoma, which is now known as Southwestern State University.
Yes.
And I was Dean of Instruction and Director of Graduate Studies there at the university. And Dr. Bale was looking for somebody, as he said, I don't know exactly what they are to do, but they're to be Dean of Administration.
It was a new place.
A new place, a new position.
Yeah.
And he said what he was trying to do was bridge the gap between the so-called academic area and the so-called, as they called it then, non-academic or academically related areas. And so there were areas in which I'd had some experience but had not been in depth concerned with them. And so it just was a challenging thing. And so we came to the university in the fall of 1960 to accept the position as Dean of Administration of the Municipal University of Omaha.
When you remember that year 1960, I imagine lots of things come to mind, your family and your new friends and a new home. But when you first came to this place we called then the University of Omaha, what were your impressions of it? What was it like as you remember it then, if you could recall that?
Well, I think a couple of things stand out in my mind. One is the size of the campus. Such a small campus. It doesn't look very much like it does today.
No.
But it was very small in size. I think it had about 50 acres. And we had come from down in Oklahoma at a state college situation where we had dormitories and all of the ancillary activities surrounding a state university of that kind or a state college of that kind. And we had just untold amount of room. And then to come to a campus here with the enrollment then, I think, about 6,500 to 7,000 students, and being on just a very small acre, that really impressed me. Second thing that impressed me was the fact that there were no dormitories, that it was strictly a commuter campus.
That was different, wasn't it?
Yeah, and cars all over the place. Now, we had a few cars on our campus there, but most of the students who attended our campus in Oklahoma were boarding students, and they came and stayed in the dormitories, and a lot of them went home during the weekend.
Yes.
But come to a place where there are no facilities at all, very strange, very strange.
As you remember this university in those first days, the programs as well as the place and some of the people have changed, but what about the programs as you remember them, the educational and related programs that we had, athletics, everything as it comes to mind? What was it like then? That's over 20 years now. That's
over 20 years ago. We had good programs at this university when I came. There were programs that had been in existence for a long time. There had not been many new programs developed in the years preceding our coming to the university. I suspect probably our program in engineering was moving along about as well as any of the programs, that is the new programs being developed at the university. But I would say that most of the programs at the university were at a kind of a standstill. We weren't developing. We had good programs, good people teaching in the programs, students interested in the various programs, but because of lack of funds, we really weren't developing very rapidly as I came here. So we really weren't moving. One of the interesting things about it, the Municipal University of Omaha was forbidden by charter from borrowing money. And while one doesn't want to talk exclusively about facilities on a campus, yet as Dr. Mabel used to say, that there are three things that make a university: funds, faculty, and facilities. As you remember, in the areas in which you worked, we didn't have adequate studios.
No.
We didn't have the facilities for lots of the research that ought to going on, the laboratories and what have you, and we just built them sort of piecemeal. So we really weren't going very rapidly in those days in terms of developing facilities to house our programs. And if you don't do that, your programs then are not going to develop very rapidly.
You know, I think many of us who worked with you in those days didn't fully realize the extent of our lack of money. I think we just went on as though there was probably enough or we'd get to be more, but we really were hurting, weren't we?
Yes, we were really hurting, and we particularly began to hurt along about the mid-60s. It just was impossible for us to get additional resources. We were getting a 2-mill levy from the city of Omaha, and then tuition was continually rising, and we were concerned at that point that we were going to price people out of an education.
Right.
So the decision was made in the mid-60s to go to the people of Omaha. The law creating the Municipal University of Omaha made it possible or permissible for us to have a 4-mill levy, but we just had 2. So we went to the people in about 1964, as I remember, asking them if we could raise that to 4 mills, and they turned us down. Now, the question, where could we go? We didn't have an active alumni association. We didn't have an active foundation for the university. And so we had to rely on, as I said, the 2-mill levy and tuition. We raised tuition, but then again we were afraid we were pricing people out of an education. Well, then we went through them a second time, Paul, and asked the people of Omaha, and again they turned us down with a resounding negative vote. Now, we were in serious difficulty. We had a choice at that point of remaining a good, strong, 4-year liberal arts institution with perhaps programs in some of the other areas, business administration, education, engineering, but really not really going heavily into graduate work and expanding programs. So we had a decision, either to do that or to find some other way to finance the university.
Do you recall what were some of the possibilities for financing other than state funds that ran through our minds and discussions in those days? What were some of the things that you thought of? I imagine various approaches to private education, among other things, right?
Well, of course, one of the things that we always hoped for is that we'd find a benefactor who would come in and give us several $1 million, of course. And back in those days, that would have been a considerable sum. In today's economy, of course, that's not quite so much. But there didn't seem to anybody on the horizon that was going to do that. We thought about creating a foundation, but that takes a good number of years to build up, you see, enough money so that the interest on your investments and so forth is bringing in a substantial amount of money. And we, frankly, were just at wit's end as to what to do. And about that time, the junior colleges in Nebraska began to try for some state aid for junior colleges. And I don't know whether you remember that or not, Paul, but they tried to get money out of the legislature, and in order to assist them and perhaps give a little bit weight to their program and their effort in the legislature, they asked the Municipal University of Omaha to go along with them. And we went along with the junior colleges for funding only, and we got so much per hour for every junior, freshman and sophomore student that was enrolled in our university. Well, that was a terrific boon to us, because when you total the number of freshmen and sophomore students we had, it was more than all the junior colleges put together. But the legislature, in their wisdom, went along with us, and we received some help from that.
That was really the first state help
That was the first state help we ever did get.
What year was that in?
I judge that was about 1968. I would, 67, I expect it was, 66, 67.
Yeah.
And that was the first time we'd ever gotten any state money. And that kind of, it helped to tide us over for about a year until we could sit back and take another good look at what we might do.
But then when we come to that, we start to talk, don't we? We're almost to the merger now, aren't we?
Yes, yes.
And as we look up here, we see the...
Yeah, we see the name across the top.
And it used to be the University of Omaha.
Used to be the University of Omaha.
But now we're getting to the time when those letters are going to be changed. And I think there's probably no one around, other than, comes to mind, Bob Spire, who was more involved, along with their regents at that time, in all that went on. Let me ask you one simple question. How did the merger take place? What brought it about?
What brought it about? How did it take place? Well, it took place very rapidly.
Yes, it did.
Now, what brought it about? Well, we have to go back just a little bit. Dr. Bale retired in 1965, in February 1965, if I remember correctly. And then we had a president come in to succeed Dr. Bale, Dr. Trawick.
Yes.
Dr. Trawick was with us just a little over a year. And this was the time when we were going through this tremendous financial crunch of the university and what have you. And for whatever the reasons may have been, the board and Dr. Trawick came to a parting of the ways. And as you mentioned in the introduction, then in December of 1966, I was named acting president of the university.
Yes.
Well, the board simply said to me, Naylor, you've got to find a way out for this university. Well, that's quite an order. Well, we talked with the board, and the board and I talked together a great deal. We talked to faculty members, people in town, legislators, and so forth. Now, our first goal was to make this a separate state university, funded by the state.
Yes.
And our Board of Regents at that time, and you mentioned Mr. Spire. Mr. Spire was...
Who were some of the other people involved?
Well, there was Margaret Fisher, of course,
yes.
and Dr. Pittman was on the board, and Pat Moulton was on the board, and Dick Nisley was on the board at that time, and Bob Fraser was on the board, and Drexel Siverdson was on the board, and Sam Greenberg was on the board, and so forth. And this was what we would like to do, but we talked it over with the legislators, our people from the Omaha area, and they said it just won't fly. The people just won't stand for another separate state university. Well, then Bob Spire and I were in Lincoln one day, and we're over in the legislature, and the late Terry Carpenter, Senator Terry Carpenter, came to us, and we sat down in the legislative chambers, and he talked with us, and he said, well, I'm going to introduce a bill which is going to make the University of Omaha, the Municipal University of Omaha, part of the University of Nebraska. And we said, well, surely there must be some other way to do it. That doesn't really sound right to us. There ought to be some other way to do it. And he said, okay, I'll give you 10 days.
10 days?
Come up with something, okay? Well, Mr. Spire and I went over to the University of Nebraska campus, and Cliff Hardin was there.
Mm-hmm.
And Cliff was then president of the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. And we talked with Cliff, and we thought something could be worked out, a kind of a merger. Maybe we'd have a University of Nebraska at Lincoln, University of Nebraska at Omaha, and it'd be funded by the state and so forth. And he said, sounds like a good idea. Well, I won't...
was that sort of the first indication of the strength of possibility for a merger?
Right. Well, then, from then on, and it's difficult to condense this in just, a few sentences, but there were meetings held between the Board of Regents for the University of Nebraska and the Board of Regents of the Municipal University of Omaha. Faculty members were consulted, townspeople were consulted, and so forth. Faculty here was consulted, the faculty over there was consulted, and so forth. And as a result, we came up with a plan that would merge the University of Nebraska and Lincoln with the Municipal University of Omaha, and strange as it may seem, in April the legislature passed it.
Now this was a plan that was in the form of a bill.
A bill was introduced in the legislature, which would create the University of Nebraska at Omaha, and it would be governed by the Board of Regents of the University of Nebraska. And strange as it may seem, it passed the legislature.
And rather quickly.
And rather quickly, and with a substantial margin.
Was there any special politicking and horse trading in that, do you recall? Was it a problem, or did it just go easily?
It never went easily. I don't think there was any politicking necessarily, or trading. There was lots of politicking. I mean, after all, it was a political move.
Yes.
And so we worked with the legislature. We met with legislators. We talked with them, and so forth. We had meetings on this campus here, and so forth. And one of the interesting things that happened in that bill was that it was put in the bill that the action of the legislature, if favorable, would have to be ratified by a vote of the people in Omaha.
So it came back to the people.
And people looked at us and thought that was a little bit silly, and that we were making a mistake and so forth. But I felt very deeply about it, that this university did belong to the people of Omaha, and that if it were going to cease to exist as a municipal university and to be merged with the University of Nebraska, they should have a say. So I insisted that it be there.
We need to take a little pause here in deliberations, and we'll come back after just a moment. We were talking about the merger, and we were talking more specifically about the legislature sending it back to the people of Omaha for a vote. And would you pick it up there, Kirk?
Yes, well, we insisted on that because we felt that people of Omaha, the university, at least had a large stake in it, and that it would be best for them to vote on it, and they did. And every precinct in Omaha carried a favorable vote for the merger.
So it was such a resounding change from the other locally,
yes,
wasn't it?
Exactly, it was. And then, of course, the faculty approved the merger, and the staff of the university, and then we were on a road. Now we begin at that point. The history, of course, will carry the details of the merger. The paper will, if people want to look at it, and so forth and so on. But it opened up a completely new era for the university. We then had financial stability, and programs could be carried on and appropriately improved for the people who were going to come to the campus and so forth. And we began to build buildings. The building over here to our right is the education building, and that's one of the buildings that was built. And the first building that was built on this campus was some state money. And that was one of the new buildings that came on. And over to our left is the College of Business Administration building.
Beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's a beautiful building. And as we talked initially, you see, you have to have facilities in order to expand and develop programs. And so following the merger and the approval by the people of Omaha, then, as I said, we had the financial stability that we needed. And that's what we were looking for. Was it too rapid development? Was it in the best interest of the university? Paul, I guess even after this many years, that was in 1968, so it's been about 12, 13 years now. I don't know. I think it was, but history will have to treat that the way history treats events of this kind. I do know, as I look around the university, that what's here at the university could not possibly have been here had it not been for some kind of action that would have given financial stability to the university. And when I talk about financial stability, Paul, I can remember when this university had its first $1 million budget. Now that's laughable now, isn't it?
Yes.
Because we're up in the 20s now. We could never have looked forward to anything like that. And so as we have developed the financial stability, then programs were developed, and all in all, from a very prejudiced point of view, the merger was a great thing.
But it was in some ways a very painful thing too, wasn't it?
It was a painful thing. People were a little bit insecure, people a little bit uncertain. The relationship of the campuses in the university, and incidentally I used the word campuses because there were several spin-outs, I guess I should say, from the merger that I guess we may not have thought about as we went into the merger. And one of these spin-offs was a designation of 3-campus unit. The University of Nebraska at Omaha, University of Nebraska Lincoln, and University of Nebraska Medical Center here in Omaha. The Medical Center was, at the time of the merger, a college of the University of Nebraska, which was located in Lincoln.
I'd forgotten that. At that time, it was
a college.
A college within the whole
It was
system.
a professional college, just as a College of Engineering, College of Architecture, College of Education, and so forth on the University of Lincoln campus. And then the whole development of the merger, it seemed appropriate to the Board of Regents and others and so forth to make a designation of a 3-campus system.
Do you think that was wise? I had forgotten that part. What were some of the basic reasons they decided to add a third as well as just a second? That's interesting.
Well, I think one of the main reasons was to give some autonomy to the medical center. Secondly, I think that with its designation as University of Nebraska Medical Center, with its own chancellor reporting directly to the Board of Regents and so forth and so on, it put them in a better position to deal with their constituency. And I can only reflect on what was told to me by the then president, Cecil Whitson,
yes,
at the time, that he felt that the University of Nebraska Medical Center enjoyed a period of development they would not have enjoyed had they have remained, say, a college of the University of Nebraska Lincoln. So that was a spin-off that I think we never thought about, and so forth. Now, you mentioned there were some problems with the merger. There were some problems with the merger. What did it really mean? What did the word merger mean? how was the university to be governed. At the time of the merger, Cliff Hardin served as president of the Lincoln campus as well as the president of the entire system, chancellor they called it then, of the entire system. We early realized that that just would not work, that somehow the administration of the merged university was going to have to take place someplace else other than on the campus at Lincoln. And so after a period of time and so forth, Regents Hall, as we now know it, was built, and the so-called central administrative staff was moved off of the Lincoln campus. So the Lincoln campus became a separate entity, as well as our campus here, and the medical center with an administrative group being located someplace else other than on one of the campuses. There was some talk at that time about the administrative corps moving to Omaha, for example. And there again are some problems. The two cities were involved in this merger in a certain sense.
Yes.
Lincoln, of course, is very proud of University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Omaha is very proud of this university, and neither one of them wanted to see either university diminished at all. They didn't want to see resources siphoned off from one to support the other and so forth. I suppose there was a bit of jealousy that was inherent on both campuses. As one of the individuals, as you mentioned, that was very active in the merger and so forth, I took a little heat occasionally as I'd go to Lincoln. And some people in Lincoln would wonder what we were going to take away from them next and so forth. And then our people up here looked apprehensively when things went to the Lincoln campus and saying if things are given to the Lincoln campus, we won't get them here. And fact of the matter, I would say, I can't speak for today because I'm now retired, but up to my retirement of last May, I'd say that same thing still goes on, I think to a minimum degree now, but still does.
Well, as you reflect on the merger and all you've said in these past minutes, and I'm sure we could go on for much longer, it turned out well, in your opinion. You're glad that it happened, and you feel that it would put us on a really solid educational footing.
I look at the merger a lot like I look at birthdays. Maybe we don't like to have birthdays come around, but considering the alternative, they're not bad. And I think that's where we are here. When I look around this university, when I see what's here now and the buildings that we've talked about and other buildings on the campus, and when I see the reduced loads that faculty members are now carrying, although I expect there are some faculty members who think they're carrying too difficult load, when I see the research activities that are going on, when I see the sabbatical leaves that are being given to people, and professional leaves being given to people, and summer study grants being given to people, those are things, Paul, that we just talked about and wished we had. And you and I were talking about the facilities. Even to me, you know, it's amazing to me that we're doing this kind of a program, and I look out here at these young people who are running the projectors and what have you and so forth. And Paul, I can remember when we almost had a cup on a string, and we were yelling to each other from one cup to the other, so to speak.
It's sort of like having a car without enough money to put gas in it.
Isn't that right? We had the car. We didn't have gas. We didn't even have tires, Paul, back in those days.
No.
You know, symbolically speaking.
Yes.
So as I think of that, yes, the answer to the question is, from my prejudiced point of view, completely biased, I admit that. But when I think of where we might have been had we not found some way, and the merger seemed to be the logical way to go back then, if we had not found some way to give financial stability to this institution, we very well could have gone under. I think I recall speaking to the medical center group. Paul, I can't think of a group in this town. During the period of time from April of 1968 until it was passed by the legislature and it was submitted to the people, I think I gave some 300 speeches to groups around this city about the merger. And one of those, I was talking to medical center people. And then, of course, I always opened it up for questions. Someone, probably one of the people on the faculty over there, said, well, Dr. Naylor, what would happen if the people don't pass the merger? The people of Omaha don't ratify the merger. I said, well, first of all, there'd be a long sucking sound. And I think that's what would happen, Paul. I think we'd have simply had to fall back. And as I said some time ago in this interview, we'd have probably decided on those programs that we felt we could maintain at a high level, high quality program. We'd have probably been a good, probably an excellent 4-year liberal arts college. And beyond that, probably not much more. But now we are on the verge now of doctoral programs on this campus, and there have been 1 or 2 doctor's degrees awarded from this campus and so forth. I think there will be others, but we've come a long way.
Now we've talked a lot, and rightly so, about the merger, the university as you saw it when you came here. I'd like to dwell, if we could, for a little while now on people. So many people have touched your lives and you have touched theirs, and as you reflect back over these 20-some years you've been with us here at the University of Omaha and the University of Nebraska, who are some of the people and why that stand out in your memory, that have helped you and worked with you a lot?
Well, this is going to be very difficult, because if I start naming names,
you're bound to forget someone.
Then I'm going to forget someone,
yes,
so maybe I could do it a little bit by category.
Yeah.
First of all, I think the people that stand out in my mind for this university are members of the Board of Regents. When I first came to the university, we had a Board of Regents for this university that had worked with Dr. Bale for years and years and years and years, and then later on we had a Board of Regents that were very active in the merger and so forth, and it was the action on the part of the Board of Regents to be willing to, in a sense, give up this university for the sake of the merger that I think was probably one of the most unselfish acts by any board I've ever been privileged to work with. And it was that vote on their part, I think, that helped us develop the plans for the merger. Then, of course, I'd have to talk about the faculty and staff on this campus. When we came on this campus in 1960, it was a new position. I think people, faculty, staff were a little bit apprehensive as to, well, now what is this person going to do? What is going to be this person's responsibility? How is this person going to act? What does this mean? The position had not existed before, and would this be a position that had come between the faculty, staff, and the president, and so forth and so on? Well, beginning from that time, right straight on through until the time I retired, I'd have to say the faculty and staff have just been tremendous. Students on this campus, well, of course, student bodies have changed a great deal. When we came on this campus, student body was very quiet, somewhat placid. I think we stirred them up a little bit on this campus, got them out of the planning the senior dance mode and into policies of the university and development of policies and what have you. Students have had and have always had a little difficult time establishing their priorities, but students have been very supportive. They're very supportive of the merger. They've been very supportive of me personally in the positions I've held on this campus. So I'd say to them, the administrative staff of the university, of course, I'm in their debt tremendously. Without them, the merger just could not have taken place. Somebody had to carry the load when much of our time was taken up in politicking, as we mentioned before, and so forth. So I'd have to mention the administrative staff, the deans of the university and what have you, and so forth. And I think that they have lent a great deal to this university and so forth. Individual faculty members and so forth, we've had some great ones, many who've gone on. Rod Crane, to name one, was here just a short while I was here, but he was a kind of an administrative assistant to the president, and yes. I remember Rod and so forth. A number of other people on this campus have gone from the campus, but they were very active back in those days.
I think of Harold Kiefover.
Harold Kiefover, who was our Vice Chancellor for Business Affairs, or the business manager of the university. And Harold was a tremendous person, a giant, a great support to me personally. And I don't think without Harold managing the affairs, financial affairs of this university, we could have really existed at all, because Harold knew where every penny was going. We had to back in those days. So I would mention Harold Payne, Dr. Payne.
Yes.
You remember him, and so forth. And he's long since left the university. And of course, Jim Earle was here for a long time, and Ralph Wardle was here for a long time. Well, now you see, I'm getting into calling names, and I wasn't going to do that, you see, because I'm leaving some out who have just done yeoman service for the university and so forth. So we're indebted to those people. Well, the merger took place, and I think we left off where I was named acting president of the university, and this was in December of '66. And
well, we were talking about the year 1967 as we took a little pause. Let's pick it up there again and take a walk down here through this part of the campus. But as we're going, We've seen some buildings here that have been added.
Yes.
We talk about the engineering building.
Now, we've mentioned this a couple of times, and we don't want to overdo it, but one of the problems was getting the facilities for the university. And here we are, Paul, standing in the middle of the campus, and there's All-Wine Hall, and over here is the engineering building and the student center building, and behind us is the performing arts building. Over on the far side is the library and so forth. You see, following the merger in 1968, within the first year after the merger, there was better than $12 million worth of buildings started on this campus. Before the merger, we hadn't built a building on this campus in 10 years' time. So we were so far behind that we really got going. Another thing I want to mention with the merger was a change in the nature of the university. You've been here, of course, about 5 years longer than I have, associated with the university. But when I came to the university, there were only a couple of buildings on the campus.
Right.
And everything centered around the administration building, we called it then, the building with the cupola on top.
Yes.
And everybody met there, and we all knew each other. Now then, we start building buildings all over the campus, and people get separated out.
Yes.
And then we begin to call them the College of Education, or the College of Business Administration building, or the Engineering building, and so colleges begin to separate themselves out. And it no longer was a close-knit type of faculty, staff, family that we had, and I'm not saying that to depreciate what we now have, but it changed the whole complexity of
it. It really did change it.
It really did. Well, as you mentioned, I was named president in 1967, served in that capacity for 5 calendar years as president of the university during all of this time when there was student unrest on the campus. We had riots and we had sit-ins and we had fights on the campus over the Cambodian affair and what have you and so forth. And so we just came into an era when things were really developing here on the campus and people were getting all excited about some of the things and upset with a lot of other things and so forth. So it was some 5-year period. During all of that time, we were trying to smooth out and work with the whole concept of the merger.
Yes. And there were really some rough edges, weren't there?
There were some real rough problems, Paul, and I think that one of the real problems that we had here with the merger was trying to establish a proper identity of this campus in relationship to the other campuses. And I think it was a problem to get the other campuses that had been in existence for a long time as, quote, the University of Nebraska, unquote, to accept us as a bona fide member of that group. So I suppose that there were things done and things said that had a tendency to be a bit divisive in nature, but yet at the same time it kept bringing up this whole problem and bringing to the attention of the Board of Regents and the Central Administration the fact that cognizance had to be given to this campus of the university. We didn't come into the merger as a junior partner. We came in as a full-fledged university, a fine university, completely debt-free, with an excellent faculty and tremendous programs. But these programs needed to be developed, and we just didn't have the financial base to develop the programs. And in seeking this money, of course, when you seek money from the legislature, there's only so much money to go around, and if we get some of that, that's that much money that isn't going to go to somebody else. Do you see what I mean?
I remember in that period, now that you mentioned some of the things that were done, we had all these merger committees.
Oh, my.
I served on one or two of them.
Right.
And lots of people did.
Right.
That was a method of trying to get us to talking with people from other campuses, weren't they?
You know, really, prior to the merger, we had relatively little contact with the Lincoln campus. We knew some of the people there, and I suppose some people had friends on each of the campuses and what have you, but to really get together as a community of scholars, we really hadn't. And so we had those merger committees that talked about how we could coordinate, how we could cooperate without deprecating the programs on either one of the campuses. And that's a difficult thing because some members of the legislature viewed the merger as one in which there would only be one department of English, for example, or one department of geography and so forth. And, but that wasn't the way it was. And we did have to watch to see that there wasn't unnecessary duplication.
Yes.
Because some of the foes of the merger, during the political aspect of developing the merger, felt that there would be a tremendous amount of duplication. Well, there is duplication. There isn't any question about it. What term we used was that there should not be unnecessary duplication. Well, there were 5 glorious years that I served as president of the university, and I enjoyed every minute of them. I look back on some of my old calendars that I have at home now, and I can go through a whole month and never eat a meal at home. So they were kind of busy times,
yes.
But I was glad to do it.
Then, as a part of that merger, as you say, after about 5 years, you left the presidency.
I left the presidency.
And I'm wondering if that was a painful period for you, a painful period of change.
No, it really wasn't, Paul, but let's get the record straight. I left the presidency of this university by request. Now, I don't want anyone to get the idea that I just voluntarily stepped down, because I wouldn't have stepped down as president of the university. But it was necessary for me, in my opinion only, to take some positions that probably were not completely acceptable by the administration. Mr. Varner was then the president of the system, yes. And his concept of administration and mine went down different tracks. And when he advised me that he felt a change would be best on this campus, there I made probably one of the most difficult decisions of my life. The faculty here had been extremely supportive of me. Fact of the matter, only a few months before, about 80% of the faculty signed a petition requesting that I remain on this campus because I was under consideration for some other positions. And I could have fought him because there was no discussion relative to my stepping down from the presidency in the Board of Regents or with Mr. Varner until the day that he told me he felt there ought to be a change. But, you know, this university is far greater than any one man. And I felt more harm would be done to this university by my making a fight out of this and contributing more to the divisiveness of the campuses than it would be for me to just to graciously accept the request of the chancellor or the president then and to go back to the College of Education or go to the College of Education as professor of educational administration. And I did. And following that, there were 10 years of just sheer pleasure. I taught in the graduate college and taught courses in the College of Education.
You and Margaret got to travel a bit?
Margaret and I got to travel a bit. The faculty was just tremendous. And by that I mean to take a person who has been on the administrative side of a college or university for as many years as I was and president for 5 calendar years, and then immediately after I went to the College of Education as a professor, I was elected to the Faculty Senate. I want to mention that prior to the merger, we had never had a faculty senate on this campus.
No, we hadn't.
And maybe we might talk just about 1 or 2 accomplishments that took place during all of this time. I think one of them, not the most important, but one of them, was the development of a faculty senate, or the making of a system in which the faculty could be involved in the policy making and governance of the university.
That really was the beginning of that, wasn't it?
That really was. And we started a faculty senate, university senate we called it then, which had representatives from the faculty as well as the staff. It had developed later on as to a faculty senate, still in existence and still very powerful on this campus, and a very fine way in which the faculty can participate. That, I think, is a major accomplishment. I think another accomplishment is the maintenance of the high-quality programs on this campus and the development of additional programs on the campus. And in all areas, and we've mentioned your area of radio, television, and so forth. When I think of our radio station and our television station and where we came from, and I look then at take an athletic program at the university. Look at the things right over here is the athletic field and the things that have happened out there. Stadium and the turf and the lights and the seating capacity and the quality of athletics played by our teams. We were so happy when Don Benning was here and coach of our wrestling team, and we're happy with the wrestling team today, and we were national champions and what have you. And seated as we are here now in this little area just outside of the student center, what a delight it is to look east and west and see this, what we call in architectural circles, the spine, running completely through the campus, clear over past the fine new university library that we have now.
Yeah, in 1981, would we have thought that we'd have had a walkway all the way
Isn't that something?
To the end of the campus?
When we had Claudette Rowland Scott come out and draw a campus plan years ago, you see, I sometimes look at that. I have a copy of it at home, and I sometimes look at that and I said, we just must have been out of our gourd, because the things that they depicted on that campus plan were things we didn't even dream of. Paul, and now you and I are here and we see them, and we see them. And we see the wonderful buildings and this fine campus, and it's beautiful. And it doesn't look to me like it's a sea of pavement. You know, we've kept talking about that. On this small acreage that we have here, we can have the kinds of buildings and facilities that we need, and at the same time, we don't need to prostitute the beauty of the campus.
And it is beautiful, yes,
isn't it, though?
Oh, sit here with the flowers and the,
oh, it's just absolutely,
it's a pretty place.
It's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful place for students to be. It's a beautiful place for faculty to be. And when I see, as I walk through the buildings of the campus, and I suppose it's a small thing to lots of people, but when I see faculty members in individual offices, I'm pleased. I can remember when we had 2 and 3 faculty members in an office. I can remember when we didn't have telephones excepting outside of an office area, and there might be a half a dozen offices and one telephone. And then to think now that we have telephones in every office, and generally speaking, I think there's only 1 faculty member to an office. It gives more privacy to them for research and study. It gives more privacy to them for counseling and what have you and so forth. And it's just gratifying to me to see it and see the improvements made in all the buildings and so forth.
Your enthusiasm, as usual, is catchy. And now I'm wondering, as we wind our visit up, in 1981, as we record this videotape, you and Margaret are retired for the first time.
Right.
What in the world are you doing with your time, and what do you plan? I'm quite sure you have some plans.
Well, Paul, we're going to stay in Omaha, that's for sure.
So you can walk on the spine, among other things?
I can walk down the spine anytime I want to. I can come to the campus anytime I want to. We're busy around town. We have a number of interests here in town. We have some little property, which keeps me a little bit busy. And we're going to continue to do traveling. We have 4 youngsters, and they're 2 of them are in Lincoln, and 1 of them here, and 1 of them in Madison, Wisconsin. We have a couple of grandkids. Just to keep up with them is going to kind of keep us kind of busy. And then, you know, and I've known for years our love for travel. And we've been fortunate. We've been able to travel a lot, but we're going to continue to travel. And I suppose as age sort of creeps up on us a little bit, we'll be looking for a little warmer climes in the winter time for at least a couple of months anyway. But basically, we're going to be here in Omaha, where we feel a close kinship to the people of Omaha. And maybe I'm a little immodest to say that, Paul, but we have been here, and through the period of development of the university, we've been in the limelight. We've made lots of friends. We're very comfortable here. We're comfortable on the campus. We have lots of friends on the faculty who are still here, and others who have retired and live here in town. So we're going to stay here because this is where we like to be.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that in this early fall of '81, because your friends and colleagues will want you to stay and be here for, among other things, just visit and consult and other friendly purposes too. And as we wind up this tape that'll be in our archives and here in various ways used in time to come, I hope people can better appreciate some of the many contributions this man has made to our University of Nebraska at Omaha and our University of Omaha. And on behalf of the staff and the faculty and the students at the time which you do this and for futures, we thank you, Kurt, and we thank you for our visit today. And stay with us long, long into the future.
Thank you for having me. Just delighted to talk to you.